Accutane made me depressed. In February last year, I started to take Accutane, and I took it for 6 months, up until early August. Those 6 months of my life would get progressively worse and worse. It's crazy. Nobody talks about this. Some people just, on the side mention that taking Accutane is gonna make you maybe depressed. But actually, if you look at the research, the chances are pretty high. You should take this into consideration. And for people who don't know what Accutane is an acne medication that's widely given to people all around the world. I'm not going to deny the fact that it helped me. I don't have acne anymore. I have very little, actually, compared to how much I had before. It was very severe. But at the same time, I'd like to warn people, and I'd like to share my story. I started taking Accutane, as I said, in February, and it was okay at the beginning. I'm generally a pretty happy person. I've always had quite a good mood and good social connections, and like nature. Yeah, I was just doing good all around. But then in February, 4 days after I took my first dose of Accutane, I'd been doing some bad habits. I played games for a really long time, overstimulated myself with the internet. And then I decided to go on a walk. I went out of the house at noon, which was crazy, but whatever. So I finally got some rays of not sunlight, because it was cloudy, and I felt like shit. I was listening to a video, and then when it ended, I decided to stay in silence for a little while. And that silence was so thick, it was so oppressive, it's unbelievable. I walked into the forest and nothing appealed to me. I really like nature, but on that day it felt like I was looking at the woods through different eyes. I was so apathetic towards everything. All I could think about was how my life was pointless. I grazed my hand on some moss on a tree, and I felt nothing. I felt no peace, I felt nothing. I just felt that everything I did was in vain. And something you should know about me is that I do exercise. I've been exercising for about 3 years. Sometimes I fall off, then I come back, then I fall off. It's pretty normal. And on that day I decided I'm gonna start exercising again. Cool. So I went on a run, and running and cardio and stuff, it regulates your mood. And so I felt better. But a pattern started building, one which I hadn't noticed up until 5 months after I started taking Accutane. So really, it was like I was almost done with my whole treatment by the time I realized what was going on. All these little coincidences kept piling up. Days on which I wasn't feeling very good, low motivation. I'd have to talk myself into exercising all the time. I felt like life was really bad. And I was so pessimistic about my future. I felt like nothing was worth it. I was scared that my life is gonna keep getting worse. I hated the feeling of time slipping past my fingers. In May, 3 months after I started taking Accutane, I ran a marathon, which is a crazy feat, Most people, they'd run a marathon and they'd be at the top of the world. I felt no different. I felt like my life was still shit. I had put such a big effort in the months prior to train, to discipline myself, and I felt nothing. It was this, it felt kind of like a deflated balloon, You know, all the air is blown out of it, and now it's lying there on the floor, pathetically. And that's how I felt. It's undescribable. It's just like every day was so bad. And I try to equalize it. I try to make my days bearable by doing exercise and doing other dopamine regulating activities, like cold showers and stuff. Instead of making a good day into a really good day, it made my day from a horrible day to a bearable day. Imagine having bearable days constantly, constantly having bearable days. You don't feel motivation, you feel unaccomplished, you feel like a failure. I eventually got a girlfriend in June, and that was 4 months after I started taking Accutane. And you know, you'd imagine you have a girlfriend, wow, how could you be depressed? Well, whenever I was together with her, I felt great. And that was kind of a pattern I'd noticed. Being around people would always cancel out the effects of whatever depression I had. You know, you'd feel good, you'd be laughing, you're having a good time. The real deal was when you were alone. And that was a pure reflection of how you were on the inside. And whenever I was alone, even when I had a girlfriend, was shit. I eventually realized in July, 5 months after I started taking Accutane, that lately my life has been really bad. And I looked back at some old journal entries, and I noticed that I was really happy, even though I wasn't really doing very much. Yeah, I was running and exercising, but I was like, it was weird. I was so happy. I was always, you know, I'm grateful for this and I'm grateful for that. You know, W, gratitude journaling. But I realize now I felt so different. It felt like it was a different person that I was reading the journal entries of. And so I sat there and tried to think, tried to fix my life. And that's the first time I remembered what the doctor said the first time I took Accutane. She was like, oh yeah, you know, you might have symptoms of depression. I was like, nah, I can't have that. Nah, no way. 5 months later, sitting in my garden thinking about it, and I finally realized what has been causing me to feel like shit all this time. And after I could finally place a finger on it, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. There was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't broken. It was just a side effect. A side effect. That's what they call it. I endured the next month, which the last month I took half the dose that I took before, and I could already tell my mood was improving. And really, my life has only gotten better since. So again, beware of Accutane. It's not the devil, but please observe your symptoms if you ever want to take it. And if you are taking it and somehow haven't realized that you're kind of depressed or more depressed than usual, please talk to your doctor, maybe find alternatives. I promise you it's worth it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.